What's happening? Happy Wednesday to all of you. Thanks for joining me as always. And yes, this is recorded from an Airbnb, but the quality is still going to be great. Hopefully, I'm recording this because honestly, the Wi-Fi at this Airbnb has been shoddy. So I wanted to record it just in case some big error happened, something bad happened, and I could edit it. So here we are on this Wednesday. Glad you can join me. And as I always say, appreciate you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll get to the mailbag in a little bit. But first, Belichick fires back. Over the weekend, we got a quote that came out from Robert Kraft when he was at the Fanatics Fest. He was doing the Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman podcast. And he said that the best move that he made as Patriots owner was the risk, the big risk he took trading a first-round pick for Bill Belichick. And apparently, Bill was unhappy with this quote because ESPN reached out to Belichick, and Belichick could not wait to talk about it. He said, quote, "As I told Robert multiple times through the years, I took a big risk by taking the Patriots head coaching job. I already had an opportunity to be the head coach of the New York Jets, but the ownership situation was unstable." So, first of all, this makes zero sense. This makes zero sense from Belichick because how could you possibly say that it was a big risk going to the Patriots when you admit yourself, in the same quote, you admit that the Jets ownership was unstable? Doesn't ownership instability make that job a risk? Wasn't the Jets' job a risk because of that instability? Or am I going crazy? I mean, I don't know how you could look at this and say, oh, well, this was not as big of a risk if I stayed with the Jets than going to the Patriots when ownership was messy. That was a big risk if you stayed with the Jets. So it doesn't make any sense. Back to Belichick. Quote, "I had been warned by multiple previous Patriots coaches." I wonder who that was. Bill Parcells, maybe? "As well as other members of other NFL organizations and the media, that the New England job was going to come with many internal obstacles. I made it clear that we would have to change the way the team was managed to regain the previously attained success," unquote. This is more deliciousness from Belichick. So let me get this straight. Everybody in the NFL was warning you that this job was not going to be good. Everybody told you, hey, don't take the Patriots job, stick with the Jets. But this is revisionist history. It's revisionist history because the Patriots made the playoffs in 3 of the 4 prior years Belichick took the job in 2000, including a Super Bowl trip with his buddy Bill Parcells. This was not an organization that was winning 3-4 games a year. This was a team, this was a franchise that was consistently getting to the playoffs. And as a matter of fact, the team that Belichick took over the year prior with Pete Carroll, they were 8-8. They were a 500 team. Not a great team, not a very good team, probably not even a good team, but not a terrible team, not a bottom of the league type team. They were 8-8 with Carroll as the coach. That was the prior year Belichick took over. So it's revisionist history to paint this picture that the Patriots were an absolute mess. They were a debacle. They were not a winning football team, and Belichick just walked in and saved everything. You're always a hero in your own story, and apparently Belichick believes in that. And I appreciate Belichick and what he did for 2 decades, and I call him still to this day the greatest coach of all time. But to try to paint the situation that he walked into as the worst situation in the history of the world. In this article, it's written that the Patriots were $10 million over the salary cap. Whoa, $10 million over the salary cap. That's like climbing Mount Everest with a fridge on your back. Like, what are we doing here? Pete Carroll with the Patriots had a record of 27-21. And yes, it descended. It was 10-6. And then in Carroll's last season, he was 8-8, as I mentioned. But this was not a losing franchise when Belichick took over. And to try to, throw that out there, to try to represent it as so, is delusional and disingenuous. And I would also mention it wasn't as bad as Belichick left it. Bill took over a team that was 8-8, made the playoffs 3 out of 4 prior years. Belichick, when he was let go or they mutually parted ways, that team won 4 games. So, I mean, he left it in worse shape. Do you remember what Belichick left for Gerard Mayo? And this is not to excuse Gerard Mayo. You all know how I feel about Mayo, but do you remember? Do you remember what that team looked like? Do you remember they didn't have a starting tackle? Do you remember they didn't have a starting quarterback? They had one running back. They had like one receiver on the roster that was worth anything. I mean, my goodness, man. If we're going to fire back with some honesty. All right, don't forget to do a couple of things before we continue. I've got more thoughts on this, then we'll get to the mailbag. Click that thumbs up as you watch us. Click that like button. Always helps us out. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Throw a comment in. How do you feel about Belichick firing back at Kraft? And don't forget to subscribe. Trying to hit 7,000 subscribers. Let's go back to Belichick. And by the way, Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, review, follow, all those good things. Belichick said, quote, I appreciated Robert giving me the opportunity to make those changes and build a program that was consistent with my vision for a championship team. It was Belichick's vision. It was Belichick's program. Belichick deserves all the credit in the world for what he built from 2000 through the 2020s. Greatest coach of all time, drafted Brady, developed Brady, kept Brady on the roster when he kept 4 quarterbacks in 2001, drafted, had a number of drafts that were fantastic, found veterans via free agency for cheaper prices, value deals, outcoached pretty much everybody he faced for a 2-decade stretch, took out Peyton Manning time and time and time again when Peyton and the Colts was, the biggest fear, if you had fear as a Patriot. All of that is true. But can we stop with the non-stop, nauseating measuring contest between Kraft and Belichick? Because it comes from Kraft's point of view as well. It comes from Kraft's people as well. Can we just stop the measuring contest? Can we just enjoy what happened? Can we enjoy the 6 championships, going to AFC championship game after AFC championship game? Can we enjoy looking back at Brady and Belichick and understand that it was a perfect storm of circumstances that led to an unbelievable stretch of football for the team that we rooted for and the team that I covered? Can we just enjoy it without a measuring contest from these two people? I mean, my goodness, it's nonstop. Kraft has to throw out the fact that Belichick won, just over 40% of his games in Cleveland. Belichick has to come back and say, well, I'm the reason why we won championships, and I had to tell Robert how to do things, and I had to tell Robert how the organization was going to be run. Can we just freaking stop being petty? The comment from Kraft wasn't even bad. He said it was the best decision that he made was the trade for Belichick. But Belichick can't help but be offended by pretty much everything. If you don't kiss his tuchus and get on the knees and pray towards the great Bill Belichick, he gets all worked up. In Kraft, on his side, he gets offended because he doesn't believe he gets enough credit. I mean, my goodness. Can't we just say that Brady, Belichick, and Kraft all had their role in what we witnessed? That you don't dominate a league unless you have good ownership, good coaching, and a really good or great quarterback? I guess we can't do that. Makes me sick sometimes. Back to the ESPN story. Asked by ESPN why he felt Kraft made statements now that hiring him was, quote unquote, a big risk, Belichick said, quote, you'll have to ask Robert. It was a big risk. That's why Kraft said it was a big risk. Even Belichick, even if he doesn't want to admit it, hiring him, trading a first-round pick for him was a big risk. At the time, it was a big risk. I don't know anybody that thought it was a great idea to trade a first-round pick for Belichick when Robert Kraft did it. It was a big risk. I mean, hindsight looking back, because it worked out so well, which proves Kraft's point. Of course, when you look back, it doesn't look as big of a risk because of what happened and how it played out. But in real time, in a vacuum, when you had to make that decision, when you had to make that call, if you were Kraft and you gave up a first round pick to bring a guy in who was hated in Cleveland, yeah, it was a big risk. Bill, I hate to tell you, it was a big risk at the time. You weren't the greatest coach of all time when he made that decision. Can you show just a little bit of humility, just a skosh? Can you try? He gave up a first-round pick, Bill. You weren't a desired coach in that moment. ESPN reaches, they mentioned Belichick's time as a defensive coordinator, trying to make it sound like hiring him as a head coach was a no-brainer. How many times have we seen coordinators do a great job and then stink as head coaches? So that doesn't land with me. Looking at his time as a defensive coordinator for Bill Parcells, to me, does not compare to looking at his record when he was the head coach in Cleveland. They're two completely different jobs, different responsibilities. It was such a risky move that it actually spawned a lawsuit, in case you forgot. Maybe Bill forgot or conveniently leaves that out. Michael McCann quote tweeted Greg Bedard this morning on Twitter. Not only was Kraft taking a risk by hiring Belichick, but it took an antitrust lawsuit by Belichick against the NFL at a time when Kraft had only been the team's owner for 6 years, and he wasn't yet an influential figure to get Belichick hired. It took an antitrust lawsuit to get this dude hired, but yet it wasn't a big risk. Everyone stop. You all played a part. Bask in the glow of 6 Super Bowls, for the love of God. All right, let's get to the mailbag. This is from Pats_FGM. I was just wondering if a rather long holdout of Travion Henderson increases the chances of the Pats holding on to Lane Larrison on their roster. Let me plug this power in so nothing crazy happens. So does Travion Henderson, if he holds out, does that make it more likely that Lane Larrison is on the roster? Yes. Yes, it does. Absolutely. If Travion Henderson decides to hold out like Trey Harris with the Chargers, again, second-round picks, 30 of the 32 remain unsigned, which is kind of bananas. We talked about it. We've covered it. We were on that before many others were on it. But yes, if Henderson holds out for any period of time, Larrison has a much better shot of making the roster. He would move up. I would, expect him to move up to the third running back behind Stevenson and Gibson. Maybe you have a little bit of a battle there with Jennings, but Larrison is a Rex Burkhead type. He would likely be that third guy. I think he would, play some on third down. I don't know how much he would play. He certainly wouldn't play as much as Henderson. But I do think Travion Henderson ends up being at camp next week. I think he shows up. I think he takes part. Dan Bolt 1. Can you discuss the UDFA class and in particular the role special teams ability could play with those bottom of the roster spots? I'm thinking particularly about the third tight end spot and defensive back room. We broke down some of the UDFA class about 2 months ago if you want to check out the archives. But as far as the special teams and how that plays a role, if a UDFA can play special teams, then yes, it gives them a better shot of making the team because the more that you can do for the team, the better. And if coaches know that you can fill multiple roles, then they're great with it. I mean, think about Brennan Schooler. He does give the Patriots some flexibility because in case of an emergency, you could throw Schooler out there as a safety. We saw him play a few snaps last year. So he's not only a special teams god, he also can play some safety in an emergency situation. So yes, that absolutely helps. And, to look at trying to crack the 53, specifically at tight end, let's give you an example. If the Patriots are going to carry 3 tight ends, and Dupree, mispronounce his name. If CJ Dupree ends up, and I did that on purpose. If CJ Dupree ends up being valuable on special teams and Jack Westover isn't valuable on special teams, then that could, in theory, give Dupree the upper hand. If Jack Westover is good on special teams, Jaheim Bell gives you nothing on special teams. That could theoretically give Westover the advantage over Jaheim Bell. But I still think when you're dealing with a team that's won 4 games in back-to-back seasons, just take the best football player. Just keep the best guy on your roster. You can finagle special teams somehow, some way. I don't think special teams is the end-all, be-all when you're deciding between 2 guys. I wouldn't look at it and say, well, do I like Del Pettis better on special teams than I like Marcus Epps? But Marcus Epps is better at safety, at free safety, so I'm going to keep Pettis? No. It's the bigger role. Whoever is better at the bigger role then should get the gig. But if it's a tie, if you're looking at a tie situation, then yes, the person who could give you some special teams, snaps is the person that's likely to get the job. And the same could be said for, cornerback, that defensive back room. Pats Pro _21, my guy. I need a Drake Maye stat line prediction. You need it, huh? Stand on business. What's his stat line at the end of the year? This is completely out of my tuchus. I hadn't thought long and hard about this, but I'm going to give you your stat line prediction, Pats Pro 21. I'm going to stand on business. Let's say 3,500 yards. Might be shortchanging him a little bit, but let's say 3,500. Let's give him, he had 15 touchdowns last year. Let's give him 23 touchdowns this year. And let's give him, I think he had 10 picks. Let's give him 9 picks this season. So 3,500 yards, 23 touchdowns, 9 picks. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit 25 touchdowns and, 3,800 yards. Let's include the rushing yards. While we're having fun with a stat line, let's include the rushing yards to be just completely ridiculous. He'll run for 600 yards and add another 5 touchdowns on the ground for Drake Maye. So there is my 2025 unscientific stat line. Similar thought here from MJ Rodnick, but a little bit different. What does a successful Drake Maye year look like to you? So I won't cover stats here, but I'll cover more tangible things that we see from him. More big-time throws. He had a lot of those at North Carolina. I want to see more big-time throws via Pro Football Focus. That number has to go up. I absolutely have to see less turnover-worthy plays. That was the biggest issue, the biggest hair across the tuk-tuk when you're looking at Maye in 2024 and what might hold him back. So we absolutely have to see less turnover-worthy plays from him. If he continues to put the football in harm's way, it's going to be a big-time issue. So less turnover-worthy plays. You can live with those kinds of things the first year and a half of a quarterback, but they really have to hit their stride and take care of the football. Eventually, I'd say at least at the latest by the midway point of their sophomore year. So less turnover-worthy plays. A steady understanding of the playbook. Does he look comfortable? Does he understand the language? Is he communicating with his teammates? Does it look like all these guys are on the same page with him? Is he dictating what's happening at the line of scrimmage? That's going to be huge. And I also want to see him less inclined to leave the pocket. I thought last year a number of times he looked like he wanted to just escape. And I understand the offensive line was terrible, but he needs to stay in the pocket a little bit longer. So be less inclined to run or escape the pocket. Try to stay in there a little bit longer. All right, let's go to K_Roberts48. Who do you think is going to be that breakout candidate for the rookies for the Patriots? Well, when I think breakout, I don't think offensive lineman. It's just not the terminology that we use. So Will Campbell and Jared Wilson, they're out of this conversation. Kyle Williams, I think, is likely going to take some time when it comes to actually starting to impact the offense. I don't think he'll get a ton of snaps early. I mean, maybe if Diggs is on the PUP, which I don't anticipate, but if Diggs starts on the PUP or Mac Hollins starts on the PUP, which is more likely, then I could see maybe Kyle Williams getting more snaps. But I think it's going to be a gradual process for Williams with this offense. So I would not expect Williams to break out in 2025. The easier choice, but the right choice is Henderson. I think it has to be Travion Henderson. I think he is going to be a big part of this offense from week one. I think against the Raiders, he's going to be out there splitting time with Ramondre Stevenson. I think Henderson, the plan for him is that they want him to make an immediate impact. You don't take a running back in the top 40 and sit him. You don't. So Henderson is going to be out there. He's going to be out there. He's going to get snaps. He's going to be used in different ways. And I think if you're looking for a breakout guy, it's got to be Henderson. He's going to have the most opportunity, and I think he's the most ready. He's more ready than Kyle Williams. So I would go with Henderson as that, breakout rookie this coming season. NEP_Sash. If it comes down to Jalen Polk versus Kendrick Bourne for the final wide receiver spot, who takes it? It's a good question. I would go with Bourne. Right now on July 16th, I would go with Kendrick Bourne over Jalen Polk. And I understand Polk was drafted in the second round, but Bourne, number one, has experience with Josh McDaniels, produced in 2021 in a McDaniels offense, seems to be very comfortable, according to reports, with this offense already through OTAs and mandatory minicamp. So I just like the experience that Bourne has. I want to get shot out of a cannon in the first month of the season. Hit the ground running with this offense. You need it. And anybody that can help you get ahead, I think should stay on this roster. And Bourne is one of those guys. So the experience with McDaniels, he's a proven NFL caliber wide receiver. Polk is not. As much as I liked Polk coming out in the draft from what I saw during his Washington years, he obviously did not prove himself to be an NFL receiver in his rookie season. We know that Bourne is. We know that Kendrick Bourne can get you 50 catches. Jalen Polk, we don't know if he can do anything more than he did last season. And I also think the maturity factor, where Kendrick Bourne is more mature than Jalen Polk from what we saw last season. Hopefully, Polk has grown away from the field, and he no longer is concerned with, making sure that he posts things on social media like the one black sheep amongst all the white sheep like he did on Instagram. Hopefully he stays away from that and he's fully focused. I would love to see both guys make the team, but if it's Bourne versus Polk, right now, again, we haven't seen what happens in the joint practices, training camp, preseason games, but right now it's Bourne. And to me, it's easy. It's an easy Kendrick Bourne over Jalen Polk at this moment in time. Stephen J. Coakley, in the joint practices with Minnesota and Washington, do you think we will be able to get a sense of how good or bad the Pats' O-line will be? I remember last year the Eagles bludgeoned our line. Oh, I remember. I was there. Woof. That first joint practice was a rude awakening, especially for that O-line. Joint practices will give us the best idea of where this offensive line is. Absolutely. I mean, when you think about camp, it's nice. And, it's competitive, and I'm sure Vrabel will make sure that training camp is competitive. But inevitably, you're facing the same guys. You get a feel for what they do. You can adjust to that. So you should be improving throughout camp against the same pass rush moves that you see day in and day out. When you go against Washington, you go against Minnesota. Yeah, you're dealing with a different defensive line. You're dealing with a different pass rush plan. Preseason games, guys don't really play in the preseason much, especially veterans. So when you're talking about the offensive line, I know you can work and try to get chemistry in preseason games, but I don't think Vrabel will play the vets much on the O-line in the preseason. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll play them more than I expect him to. But, Garrett Bradbury, he might play a little bit more if he's in a competition with Jared Wilson, depending on how Wilson feels if he's out there during camp. But when you look at Bradbury, he's been in the league for a long time. So if there's not really a heated competition at center, I don't think he plays a ton in the preseason. I don't think Onwenu plays a ton in the preseason. He's been around. He gets it. And unless Onwenu is completely out of shape, we'll see. Morgan Moses, I don't think will take a single snap in the preseason. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but 34 years old, coming off of surgery, feels like you got to save his bullets for the regular season. So with the idea of the veterans on that O-line, the expected starters on that O-line who are vets, not playing the preseason, then I think the joint practices will give us the best idea as to who the collective five is going to be and how they work together. And, the Vikings defensive line is very talented, very talented. And Brian Flores, as we know, as a defensive coordinator, is a stud. So specifically that Vikings joint practice, I think will give us the best gauge on not only the offensive line, but really the offense as a whole, including Drake Maye. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button. Don't forget to like, helps us with the algorithm. Don't forget to throw a comment in. How do you feel about these, mailbag questions, Belichick firing back at Kraft? Don't forget to subscribe, trying to hit 7,000 subscribers. We are 1 week away from training camp. Of course, my friends, Apple Pods, Spotify, rate, review, and follow. We will be back on Friday. I don't know what my background is going to look like. I don't know how the internet is going to be. I don't know if it will be recorded or live, but we will be here Friday, 3 o'clock, YouTube. Until then, be well, and I appreciate you.